In this video, I review Dreadball 2nd edition by Mantic Games. Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. So, Dreadball is a futuristic sports game based in Mantic's Warpath universe. It originally published in 2012 after a very successful Kickstarter, and this also funded a further 2 seasons of additions to the rules and some further teams as well. This was then followed up by a second Kickstarter in 2014, which saw the addition of Dreadball Extreme rules and a further 3 seasons of additional rules and teams. Now, as you can imagine, this became a little unwieldy, and in 2016 there was a third Kickstarter to tidy up the rules of the original, plus the 6 seasons of expansions, add some additional teams, and balance everything out and release Dreadball 2.0. Now that new release goes on sale in March, and what I have today is a review copy of that core set of the latest edition. So for those that don't already know, Dreadball is a 2-player game where each player, or coach as they're called, takes control of a team of miniatures and tries to defeat their opponent by scoring more points, or strikes, over a game made up of 14 turns, or rushes as they're called in the game. During a rush, that coach has 5 actions which allows his players to run, sprint, throw, catch, slam, steal, and evade, amongst other things. Now, teams are made up of 3 types of player. There's guards, who are heavily armoured. Think of it like a defensive player. We have strikers, who are the fast, agile strike scorers. And lastly, we have jacks, who are really the jack of all trades. Not as accurate as strikers, but more agile than a defensive guard. Now, these different roles give benefits in the game. So for example, guards can't pick up the ball or score a strike, however they do get a bonus when slamming into another player. Strikers, conversely, can get a bonus when throwing or when catching, however they're more susceptible to damage during their armor checks. Each team is made up of a mixture of your choice of these roles, and you can field 6 on the pitch at any one time, with others available on the subs bench. Now, the main mechanic of how everything is decided in this game is based upon a 3d6 dice pool, where you roll this against a stat in the player's stat line. You then either add dice or subtract dice from that starting 3 dice pool, depending upon factors such as whether your player ran, what type of player it is, or whether you're slamming into the rear of a player, just as some examples. As an example, if a jack wants to run up and try to slam into the rear of an opposing striker, then he starts with 3 dice in his pool. A slam is a strength test, so on his stats he needs at least one of his dice to be a 4+. Now we look at the modifiers. Because this player ran up to slam, he gains an additional dice to show the added momentum of that run into the slam. He now rolls 4 dice, needing a minimum of 1 4+. Now the striker gets to try and avoid the slam by dodging it. Dodging is an agility test, so he needs to achieve the same number of successes or mores on a 4+ to dodge the slam. He again starts with a 3 dice pool. He then adds 1 dice to show how agile he is as a striker, and then he loses 1 dice to show that he's been slammed from the rear, making it harder for him to dodge the slam. We now look at the difference in the number of successes. In this case, the jack has slammed the striker and has 3 more successes. Because the jack not only got the 1 success he needed, but also doubled the amount needed, the striker is pushed back 1 hex and knocked prone. The striker now takes a dice for each success that the jack had and rolls them against his armor stat, which in his case is a 5+. He has 1 dice of a 5, which means he negates 1 point of the 3 damage and is taken out of the game for 2 further rushes, based upon the 2 remaining points of damage. If he'd taken more than 3 points of damage in this slam, he'd have been out for the rest of the game. There are also additional rules around special cards, which are drawn to either give a player a bonus in during the game, show how many hexes the referee needs to move, or to show fan support, which eventually mounts up to allow you an extra card, as in a bonus to do something in game, or give you a coaching dice, which can be used to boost your chances when rolling to do something. The game goes back and forth with each coach using their 5 actions in their rush before moving over to their opponent coach to use their 5 actions. The coaches have 7 rushes each, making up the 14 rushes of the game. The game begins with the ball launching in from the side of the pitch, and coaches have to use their 5 actions to try and pick up the ball and score a strike. Strikes can be scored by standing in one of the highlighted strike zones and throwing the ball into a strike hex at the end. There are 3 strike zones on either end of the pitch. The 2 outer strike zones will score you 1 point for a successful strike, whereas the furthest away in the middle will score you 3 points, so there's some tactics in where you score. Just to add to this, each strike zone has a bonus hex, so that if you score from standing on that particular hex, which is the furthest from the strike hex, you'll receive 1 extra bonus point. This means you can either take the easy point, or really push it and go for a massive 4 points, and this can really swing a game quickly. The game is either won by having more points at the end of the 14th rush, or by causing a landslide victory by getting to 7 points. Now, this is harder than it sounds, as rather than a normal scoring system such as in football or as in hockey, Dreadball employs a tug-of-war type mechanic. If you score 4 points, the tracker moves to 4 on your side. However, if your opponent then goes and scores 3 points, the tracker slides back 3 places, so you're only at 1. This means you need to score 7 more points than your opponent for that landslide victory. Games can take between 60 and 90 minutes to play once you have the rules down. So as far as the review goes, let's go on to the pros and cons, and let's start with the cons. So my first kind of gripe is the ball itself. It's just so tiny and fiddly to use. The models sometimes get in the way of trying to place it in the little hole which is on the base, and the holes are actually a little bit too big, so it's quite loose on the base as well. Now I appreciate this is more to scale, but it's not that easy to see. I think that somewhere players will find a way to modify this either by putting it on a little base or magnetising the bases just to make it a bit easier. Next is the different positions of the players, and there's not a huge difference in the sculpts of the miniatures to be able to determine the difference between guards, jacks and strikers at first glance. Now there are some subtle differences if you know what you're looking for, such as bigger shoulder pads on the jacks or maybe heavy armour on the guards. However, out of the box, for new players, it takes some inspection. Now some options could have been standard poses for each position, or they could have had coloured hex bases for each position. I suppose painting them yourself will certainly help this out, but it's just something to watch out for. Now the miniatures in this core box come already based onto those clear hexes. And this is a tough one as it does mean that out of the box you can just go and play. However, for anyone planning on painting their minis, it does pose a few problems. It'll certainly be difficult to prime your miniatures without painting the clear base, if this isn't something you want to do. Some of the minis don't quite line up with the front facing side of the hex. Now it's not a massive issue, it's just a little niggle. I think the Kickstarter actually came with the bases separate, but I can see why they've done this for the core box. Now they can be removed from the base and re-glued if you really want to. However, I would just be very careful with this, as I can imagine you do risk cracking the bases as they are quite thin. The next thing is the plastic tray insert inside the box. It just doesn't make any sense. The position for the cards is obvious, but other than that, the rest of the contents don't seem to make any correlation with the layout. Now it's a minor issue, but when the games like The Walking Dead come with that vacuum formed trays, this was a little disappointment. Now to summarise my cons list, none of this actually affects the game, but in the interest of a fair and balanced review, I thought it only right I should bring everything up. So on to the pros. Let's start with the rulebook. The rulebook is laid out very well indeed, with a contents page that's structured by actions. So if you have a question around a particular thing that you're trying to do, it's easy to find out where that query is likely to be answered. The quick reference guide on the back of the rulebook again is really well laid out. You could almost play the game never reading the rules and just referencing this page. The addition of page numbers relating to these actions make it double up as an index too, and that again is very useful. The Read This First booklet is a great way to introduce new players to the game. The preset board with the step-by-step instructions to follow, ending with you playing out the last 2 rushes of the game with some reduced rules, makes it very easy to understand the mechanics of the game. Now onto the modifier mechanic. Making everything based from a 3 dice pool and then adding or removing dice as modifiers is a great mechanic. It gives much more flexibility to a D6 based game and saves a lot of extra confusion on stat lines of teams. As an example, the Draconis All-Stars Jack will always have a 4+ roll for every test he has to make. Easy to remember. The number of dice you get to make this roll is what's variable given the situation. It's simple but elegant. Now, exploding sixes is not something I've talked about. Every time you roll a 6, it allows you to roll another dice again. And this is a great addition, even when you're down to rolling one dice to block or evade. There's always that chance of a string of sixes, which give you moments to talk about forever with your gaming group. Now onto the miniatures themselves. So single piece miniatures in a game like this are a great idea. There's nothing to do when you open the box, but just to play. Coloured plastics make it really easy to distinguish one team from another. Now, as in other games, there is nothing stopping you kit bashing your own teams and using the stat lines from a pre-generated team, so the hobby aspect is still there if you really want it. However, from the vast majority of players, this is a great idea. Now, the sculpts are very good. They're a little on the small scale for my personal preference, but there's no doubting that they're very nice models. The referee, the rush counter, and the score tracker being actual models rather than just tokens is a really nice touch. They make no difference to the game itself, but they just add to the theme and they're a really nice inclusion. Now onto the rest of the components. Plastic tokens again is a great addition. Too many games these days go with just card tokens, and then they sell the plastic tokens as an upgrade. It's really nice to get them included in the core set. Now it's also good to see that there's enough dice included in the game to play it the way it should be. It would have been very easy to put half as many dice in as many other manufacturers do. The board itself is really well laid out, and an addition over the first iteration of Dreadball is places for the cards and the tokens and somewhere to hold the dice. This is a nice upgrade. The fact that it's double-sided with a Dreadball Ultimate Pitch on the reverse side is again a nice addition, should you wish to expand your Dreadball experience in the future. The cards are clearly printed and are a standard size, should you wish to sleeve them. 52 cards sleeved and piled up on the board may be problematic, but it's something that you can do if you wish to. The addition of a couple of captains in the core box, plus the relevant cards, is a nice way to expand the core set. These extra rules that the captains add give a glimpse of more depth to the game and show what some of the other teams will introduce in terms of special rules. So to the game overall, its fast-paced, straightforward rules make it a really fun game to play. It feels very sports-like and not just like a tabletop brawl. The multiple scoring options from the different strike zones, whilst it's a simple thing to do, bring a level of depth that means it doesn't just become an I score, you score, and the push-pull system keeps games very interesting, as you feel like you're pulling your opponent back from the win rather than just trying to play catch-up. Now it's quite a subtle thing, but it really does make you feel like you're never out of the game. Now the future of the game also looks very bright. At my count there was around 29 teams available, and games like this live or die by the number of team options available to players. Dreadball certainly benefits from its history of having multiple teams available at relaunch, along with streamlining of the rules and balancing of those multiple teams under the new rule set. It's perfect for a one-off game, it's perfect for setting up a league at your local store or at your local club, and it works great for tournament play too. It will always, unfairly in my opinion, be compared to Blood Bowl, purely because it's a sports game on a marked out board. However, that's where the comparisons should end. It's a much faster paced game and the rules are a lot easier to get started with. The complexity in this game comes from the tactics that you employ and learning how to get the best out of your chosen team. There'll always be that lucky exploding 6 on a single dice roll, or missing that slam with 6 dice on a 3+, but ultimately experience will play out over luck, just as it should in any balanced game. So on to the ultimate question, should you buy it? Well, if you like fast-paced, easy to get into 2-player games, it's a no-brainer. The core set comes with everything you need to play, and new teams to expand your experience down the line are very well priced. If you're looking for a second game to play that won't take up a lot of headspace from bigger, more complicated rule sets, then again, it's a great starting place. You don't need to paint the models, but of course you'll want to. If you're looking for something to play competitively, then again, this is a great option. Mantic have already begun to set up tournaments, and as the game grows, these will become wider spread. The only thing that will stop this game becoming popular is if people don't play it. It then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that no one plays it because no one plays it. Now that's where you come in. If you like the look of this game, either from my review or from another video you've watched, then go and try the game. Speak to your friendly local gaming store and get them to get a demo game in the store. I honestly believe that this game will go places if the community gets behind it. Mantic will do their part by supporting competitive play and local leagues, but a game is only as good as the community that plays it. As always, over to you. Do you like the look of this game? Is it something that you've already played and you love it? Do you try the original version but no longer play it now? Let me know down in the comments and we'll have a chat about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.